I'm gonna go ahead and start the Hakuoki Kyoto wins, which I'm very excited for. I did play this on the PS3, but it was just called Shinzengumi on that one. This one's called something completely different, so I'm hoping that it will be a new story. Oops. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm gonna turn it up real quick and mute myself. If it lets me. It won't. Never mind. I'm just gonna turn it up. This thing blocked out the sound pretty well, huh? They're so pretty.
Were those the boys?
Those are the boys.
Those other two boys were like the boys that I probably would go with.
Even the ninja guy is an option, but I think that was only on the PlayStation Vita. I don't know if it is for this one. Even those two, well, him I think was an option. I'm so geeky out. I'm so happy I got this. Whoa, who are they? I've never seen them before. What?
Some more options.
What?
Blue hair dude looked pretty cool.
Those two got beef. They do. They do. Yes, baby. New game. New game me. Okay. Delete inputs. We'll put Jade. That sounds acceptable. Jade Yukimura.
I love Courage. Sorry, I'm listening to something.
This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, and events. Didn't even let me get to read. That's cool.
I'm surprised you're not using me in there so you can get more voiceage.
What?
Because, like, you're going to be voice acting in the film.
I don't think so. I remember the Shinzengumi one. They mostly talked. So I'm hoping this is the same case.
I don't hear anything.
Unless it's only Chizuru. So this is Kyoto.
You gotta do a kawaii desu voice.
This is Kyoto. No. She actually,
That was actually pretty good. Can't wait for it.
no, because in the, when she is well, She's traveling as a he, and that's all I'm gonna say.
So she's pretending to be her brother.
No, she's pretending to be a guy. She doesn't know she has a brother.
No, well, why is she pretending to be a guy?
You're making me cause spoilers, woman.
Don't call me a woman.
You non-binary tofu.
Thank you. You can call me a girl, but don't call me a woman.
It was awfully impressive, no denying it. Even simple hellos between people passing in the street seemed warm and friendly. Why are we talking like that? Why are we typing like that? Okay. They nodded and smiled to one another as if family and not strangers about on errands. Still, there was something else as well. Something making the city feel strangely cold. Almost as though there was a great invisible wall shutting out anyone wandering from the country. I'm not sure if I belong here. No, that's all in my head. I walked quite some distance to reach Kyoto, and both my mind and body were exhausted. Even so, tiredness was no reason to meander. What? And feel sorry for myself. I couldn't afford to. Excuse me. I hesitantly stopped a passerby. I'm sorry, I seem to be a bit lost. Could you... What am I supposed to do now? I was lost again, but in a different sort of way. I sighed and looked up at the darkening sky. The sun was beginning to set. People that I've spoken to showed me no unkindness. They'd given me directions I needed, but was now really the best time to leave the city? Learning the person I'd hoped to visit had left town caused hope to seep from my crumbling resolve. Let's see. The only person besides father I could rely on in the city... The only other person besides father I could rely on in the city... who I could rely on, Dr. Matsumoto. That's interesting. Okay. Dr. Matsumoto was a doctor serving the shogunate. I had never met him myself, but my father put a great deal of trust in the man. He had told me that if I ran into any trouble in his absence, I was to contact Dr. Matsumoto. Unfortunately, Dr. Matsumoto was out on business and would not return for some time. Was I too hasty? Perhaps I should have waited. It is indeed rude to visit without warning, which is why I had sent a letter prior to my arrival. But it seemed he had left before reading my letter. Perhaps I thought I should have waited for a reply before traveling to an unfamiliar city. But I can no longer spend time waiting, ideally for news. Okay, you're right. I'm going to be having some reading. I'm going to have a lot of reading. Get ready for a lot of monotones. Jade. Is something wrong, Father? He paused for a moment and looked at me. Okay, do that through the whole thing. Is it for business again? He left the house often during that period, sometimes for days at a time. How long will you be gone? Oh. There was no hiding my disappointment. Nonetheless, I wasn't a child anymore. I couldn't beg him not to go or some other foolishness. Yes, I'd be lonely, but I was much more worried for him. Please, Father, be careful. They say that the city of Kyoto is dangerous. He only smiled and nodded. Okay, you promise? Father kept his promise. A new leather... I'm learning to talk. A letter arrived so often I scarcely had the time to respond before another would arrive. He told me that he worried about me being home all by myself. Then the letter stopped. A whole month passed with no word. Father, they say Kyoto is full of Ronin. Is it not a safe place? Usually a samurai is paid by their house, but Ronin who report to no house often rob people in order to make ends meet. They're nothing more than violent criminals who hide behind the image of the samurai. Such is the state of the city of Kyoto, the city of Ronin. Small wonder, then, that I worried for my father. My mind would concoct horrible possibilities, and I often find myself depressed. First, I suppose I need to find a place to stay. Lost in the thought, I didn't notice nightfall descend. If I was honest with myself, I hadn't the faintest idea of how long searching for him would take. I'd brought a negligible sum of money with me, enough to last me a month, if used wisely. Finding Father in this window of time was a must. Otherwise, I would have to depend on Dr. Matsumoto returning in this time, or else I would be forced to return home without a word. Well, at any rate, I should try and be as frugal as possible. I lengthened my stride and set off on my path. Fortunately for me, men's clothing assisted with keeping a quicker pace than women's. Kyoto presented many dangers to a young girl hoping to explore the city without direction. My disguise, such as it was, proved successful, and I had safely made it all the way to Kyoto. Such success went to my head and led me to believe I could explore Kyoto as I pleased. But Kyoto is not a safe place. I should have remembered that. Instead, I had somehow convinced myself that the city's hidden dangers didn't apply to me. I was about to discover otherwise. I spun around. In the street in front of me were 3 Ronin. Can I help you? I did my best to keep my voice calm, reaching nonchalantly for my kodachi. Oh, I guess I can't click that to look at it. My father encouraged me to take sword lessons. I kept with them, and I did rather well. Was confident enough in defending myself. However, perhaps my overconfidence in myself is what served the situation at hand to me. I'd messed up and let my guard down. My fault. There was a chance I could take them on, but there were 3 of them and 1 of me. Only then did I realize they were far more interested in my sword than they were in me. But the sword wasn't just some blade I'd picked up. It was a family heirloom spanning generations. There was no way I could give it to the Ronin, though I had a feeling they wouldn't understand. In such a situation, the best decision was undoubtedly to retreat. I turned and ran as fast as my legs could. Gosh, they sure don't give up easily, do they? I felt like I'd been running for quite a while, but I could still hear the Ronin cursing loudly. I ducked into an alley, flattening against the wall. After deciding they weren't too close, I crept into the alley. Someone left a couple sheets of wood leaning against one of the houses. A perfect hiding spot. What luck, I thought, kneeling down under them. This is my way to escape this mess. Huh? I was listening for sounds intently. A suspicious calm entered my mind. I'd expected to hear the Ronin yelling to each other looking for me, but seconds turned into minutes. I heard nothing. I was about to sneak out and have a look when... Well, what? My plan to investigate was immediately halted. Remaining silent and hidden was more important. Still. It was then that true fear began to set in. There was something dangerous out there. Something quite possibly lethal. My imagination conjured up no shortage of gruesome theories. Even so, I could feel an itch of curiosity. I wanted to know what was out there. Carefully, I peeked around the corner's edge. The cold reflection of moonlight upon a blade glared at me, and my eyes followed it to the arm that held it, clad in a coat of light blue. Had this person saved me? But no. Slower than it appeared, my hope vanished. I heard the Ronin stumbling to beg for his life. The person in the blue coat said nothing, just stepped forward, his sword raised. A high screeching laugh cut the man's scream. The blade fell through the air like a butcher's knife rather than a sword. No skill, just death. The screen turned wet, caught, and disappeared like air, leaving half-empty bellows. My eyes went wide. I had just witnessed a murder. Any strength I received vanished quickly. My legs gave way and I crumbled to the ground. My eyes widened like busted shells. He died with the first blow, but as I watched, the blades fell, carving lines into the corpse. The soft slip of a blade through flesh, a silent creep of blood across the ground. I felt nothing from them but madness. Their only desire was raw, animalistic violence. Whatever they were, it wasn't human. They were broken. I could feel my throat clenching tightly, and a warm, dark smell brushed against my face. I slowly recognized the coppery tang of blood. An icy bolt of fear ran down my spine, crawling into my limbs and freezing me in place. I was terrified. What was I going to do? What could I do? You have to run, Jade. I forced my jaw open and drew a ragged breath. This was the only chance I'd get. I had to. My body, still numb with fear, was unresponsive. I lurched sideways against the stacked wood, and with a rough clatter, it collapsed. The creatures turned coats drenched in blood. Their eyes locked with mine and bore into me. Hideous grins split, their inhuman faces shaking with excitement at prey to the slaughter. I had to run. I couldn't die yet, but my legs refused to move. Their hideous, cackling laughter echoed. I was going to die. My body was frozen with terror. I couldn't even scream. This was it. This was the end. What? I watched them raise their bloody swords, the moon glistening off the metal. Then there was a flash of light and the soft splash of blood. I could feel it, warm and sticky. Bile began to rise in my throat, but before disgust took hold, I heard a voice. The words suggested disappointment, but the voice sounded happy. As he spoke, the strange man smiled, almost as if he were enjoying himself. He laughed. The man called Sato sighed with the air of a long-suffering companion and looked at me. His tone was light, but it confirmed my fears. I may have escaped the schemes of the Ronin, but I was ensnared by something much darker. Huh? Then, who was in charge of these two? The conversation led me to believe they were part of an organization. As I thought about it, I recalled hearing about men with blue coats. My thoughts were interrupted by a dark shape sliding into view. Oh. I swallowed hard. The moonlight shone off his smooth, dark hair. For reasons I couldn't fathom, in that moment the light on his hair made me think of the wistfulness of flower petals. It was almost as if the cherry trees were blooming out of season. His voice was cold and quiet, like a blade of ice. Blue-white moonlight lit his slender face and shone from the blade pointed at my chest. But it wasn't the sword making my breath catch. It was his eyes. They were fierce and hard, but somewhere behind them, I could catch a glimpse of something else. There could be no doubt that he was prepared to kill me, and yet he looked troubled. Not kindness, but perhaps mercy? Hi, Camilio. Welcome to the stream. I nodded. There was no doubt he meant every word he said. He stared at me for a moment, then grimaced, but put his sword away, sighing. What? I was too surprised to stop myself from speaking, and it quickly became apparent that I wasn't the only one.
あれいいんですか土方さんこの子さっきの見ちゃったんですよ
It's not like I wanted to see everything. As he spoke to the man he called Hijikata, I'm probably butchering that name, his eyes narrowed. The man called Hijikata frowned back at him. It was clear enough that what I've seen was something they wanted to keep hidden. The more they said, the more I got it, and it was clear none of us wanted such a thing. The way he looked at me made me feel as if he'd read my mind. Yes, I am. I'm gonna probably play it maybe tomorrow night, or maybe in the afternoon time. It depends on when my sister wakes up, because she loves playing that game too. Then he looked down at the creature he'd killed, as though he'd forgotten the whole ordeal. Oops. He peered down at the corpse, his face an emotionless mask. When he looked back up at his companions, however, his eyes narrowed. He was right. Even I had heard stories about a gang of cruel men in blue coats who cut people down in the streets. But I didn't know how to confront the dilemma of pretending I didn't see any of these horrors. Oh, thank you for the follow. And yes, do come back again. And if you want to keep chatting or check out this game, it's a pretty good game too. It's like one of those well, it's an otome. It's like one of those romance kind of games, animes. My mind swirled through a pool of worries and thoughts, almost as if I was being drawn into their world. No, I know that feeling. A world where there is nothing strange in carrying on a normal conversation in the dead of night with corpses for company. The game is about